Anywho, yeah, thanks for showing up, everyone. In general, I mean, I'm sure people will be rolling in over the next few minutes, so there's no real need to rush the introduction. But the idea is that today, I mean, we'll be taking a quick look at a couple of the other events we have coming up. I think there's a weekly session that we have going on in general, and one Junto coming up later this week as well. But beyond that, we'll be introing Alberto to give us a pretty nice talk on audits. So yeah, as far as the Junto, it looks like, yep, on the 31st, we have one final official one. And of course, past that, we want to continue keeping everybody active, even if the cohort might be over, especially in context of, I don't believe there is going to be a next cohort immediately. So we want to like give people a good, bit of structure, even post cohort. And then more specifically, so our talk today, right, guys, is generally supposed to be on audits. And these are, on the left, two literally from the past 24 hours, right? What can we learn from this? This is somebody talking about a jet had a protocol hack that was, vulnerable for an extended period of time. And right, I love this in particular. There was no PR comments whatsoever other than looks good to me, right? So that's a problem. The idea is hopefully people can avoid this stuff. Yeah.
You are missing the running hack, which just happened, and it's
really?
600 million.
Oh well, so yeah. I didn't. That's not as. I don't know. I don't blame cross-chain bridges as much as I blame other people because I know they're hard, right? I don't know, but yes, that's huge. And these are more like people that really fucked up, in my opinion, right? Saying that your system is closed source and it's now harder to hack is ridiculous, right? And then even worse is like, if you do get hacked, don't go out and tell people that no phones are at risk and that there was not a bug, right? All right. So with that all said, introducing Alberto, right? So Alberto is the co-founder and engineering lead at Yield. And I mean, I guess I'll let you introduce yourself if you'd like to.
All right. So hi guys, and girls. I'm Alberto. I'm the co-founder and engineering lead at Yield, as it says there on the slides. I started in blockchain in 2018 as a complete novice in blockchain, but switching sides from traditional finance. And since then, I started a little bit like an architect, trying to sell projects to people, but then at some point I swapped over to a developer role, my first ever developer role at the ripe old age of 37, and I happen to love it. So since then I've been coding tons of smart contracts, doing everything, trying always to code like simple blocks, the simple things, most simple things that I could find, and then explaining them to others, because I like explaining things to people, especially I like to make them simple and explain them. And after coding a number of silly projects, I landed on Yield, where I coded basically by myself the first version, and then basically by myself again the second version. We were not very good at hiring. I really needed help, but we couldn't find it. But well, the result is that I coded a lot and got audited quite a lot as well. So yeah, that's it. I've also done 2 ERCs, one for flash loans, one for yield bearing bolts, stablecoin, USM FAM. And yeah, I've contributed to Open Zeppelin, Alliance Blocks, Cementao. I did one of the first fixed point math libraries. Yeah, all this. And now I judge audit contests for Code Arena, which is very cool because it gives me a great vantage point on which see lots of audits. I restrict myself to one each month, but I have to go through it deeply and see how different auditors work. And yeah, and lately I've happened to be audited a few times and to talk a lot with the auditors, and I've learned to love my auditors and I want to make it right for them. So this talk is to make them happy.
Awesome. I'm not muted. Yeah, I'm not muted anymore. Awesome. Well, I'll pass this over to you to screen share. And I definitely relate about, at least, I think when you guys started your project, finding talent was impossible, right? So, I mean, I'm still our smart contract developer as well, right? That just is how it goes sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, this will be a talk for another day, but if you want me to give you a talk on how to hire developers, I can also do. I have some
I mean,
inside information.
if you've got inside information, maybe you don't want to share it with the whole cohort, but yeah. I mean,
it's fine. I have my own developers. I don't need more. I have as many as I want, so
you
I can
always
share.
need more. But yeah, sure. All right, we can set up another call for sure.
Cool. Okay, I'm sharing
Awesome.
my screen. I'm going to share this screen. There you go. You can see. Yep, sorry, there. Okay, so thank you everyone for attending this talk. This talk is about how to prepare for a smart contracts audit and how to get the most out of a smart contracts audit. And it has a very, very definite bent to it. That's why I said that this is about how to win friends and code safely in reference to the famous book. We all want to code the safe smart contracts and we all want like friends. So we can combine both things. You will see how. Let's start by saying that coding is fun, and it should be. I have lots of fun coding, and I would like everyone to have fun coding. But that doesn't seem to be very much in synchrony with the fact that, I'm using cutting edge technology, which is barely mature. It can even overflow Solidity. That's awful. And it's going to manage billions of dollars every day. And not only that, but the users are right there on Discord. And when they're not asking you, where's the token? They are telling you, have you noticed the $600 million leaving? So those two things don't seem to go very well together, and yet they actually do. I do have fun coding, and I secure millions of dollars only for now, billions tomorrow, and I sleep pretty well at night. So yeah, you don't. Coding smart contracts is not for crazy people. It's not that stressful.
Yeah, people are
can be done.
scared of it. People think it's spooky, but I don't know. I think it's one of the easier languages, in my opinion. Solidity.
Yes.
Yeah, people just are spooked, so don't be that person. Yeah.
Yeah, people every now and then ask me, but how can you do this stuff? Don't you freak out every day? No, it's fine. No, because there is a process. Okay, it's not me just pumping some code onto mainnet and hoping for the better. That's Andre when he tests in prod. Now there is a process in which we make sure that that code is safe. At the beginning, we were all testing in prod. Okay, the first thing that someone started doing just after the DAO hack was actually, hold on, should we do some kind of third-party review of the code before we put it live in case that, I don't know, to get another pair of eyes? Hence, the smart contract audit was born. It's one of the first things that was created in this process to code safely, and is very specific for smart contract development. You don't really hear code audits for anything else. So it catches the imagination of people, and many people think that this is the smart contract safety is passing an audit. There is more to that. Passing an audit is one step that actually is very long. It starts when you start coding and finishes after you have passed the audit, but it's only one step. In this talk, you will hear more about what the audit actually is, how does it relate to the other steps, and how to get something out of it. Who are you? That's what I ask to myself every morning in the mirror. No, who are you, seriously? You are not an auditor. If you're a smart contracts auditor, sorry, this is not aimed to smart contracts auditors. You might be aiming to be a CEO or a CTO or a smart contracts developer. And when you go and read about how to successfully go through an audit, you will find a number of guides from very good auditors on how to audit. I will give some pointers later on, but that's not really information that you want. I started this talk as precisely that as how should you audit a contract, and I started that, but that would be very much like the rest of the talks out there, and you can find excellent information about that. And that wouldn't be true because I'm not really an auditor. I've been audited many times, but when I go and have my code audited, I always marvel at how smart these guys are and how different from me. I can code a lot and I can code pretty safe code, but every time that I talk with an auditor, it's like, wow, how did you see that? And that, how did you see it? I missed that one. I missed that one. My code is clean. How can you see all that? Auditors have a very different skill set to developers. Okay, it's a very specialized job, and they are better as auditors as I could ever be. So what I want you to be, and I want myself to be, is someone that makes their job easy. I want to get that top-rated auditor, which is really, really good at his job, and I want to squeeze all of the skill out of it. Okay, I want to make his job really easy. That's what I want. I don't want you to be an auditor. I want you to know how to work with an auditor. About me, what are my credentials to be able to tell you that? Julian already introduced me, but basically enough to say that I've been audited many times, and I'm working closely with auditors judging their work. So I've got to know actually how they work, and I've got to appreciate a lot of them, and I like helping people. So I want to help auditors to do a good job. That's what pleases me.
And just for my own comments, right? There's a reason I brought Alberto on rather than anyone else, right? If anything, I shouldn't be bringing on our potential competitors as like my guests. But the bottom line is their code base is great, and it's clear that Alberto had made a lot of efforts to do exactly what he's talking about, make things easy for the auditors to understand the code, make things easy for integrators to understand the code, and really all of this kind of like goes together, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I'm still learning, though. I've always made a very strong effort to make very clear code because that makes for safe code. But in the last few audits and writing these, I've thought of more things. So this talk actually is about what I'm planning to start doing now. It's not as much as what I do already. It's like I do all this, but I can do it better. And this is a talk of what am I going to do better now. Cool. And I'm going to talk about clean code. So structure, what are you going to hear? Basically, you know that we are going to talk about audits, who I expect you to be, who am I. I'm going to tell you why you should get an audit. Not such an easy question. It is worth saying. What are you trying to get out of an audit that no one actually tells you? Who is the auditor and how you should consider the auditor? What documentation you need to do, and you'll find it interesting. How to get the most out of your auditor, how fun it is to be with an auditor, and what to do afterwards. Okay, so it has a very clear chronological pace. This is not an audit. An audit is not a marketing tool. It's 2022. Probably we are all past that. Like, look, I've been audited by Certic. My contracts are secure.
That was my first question was, yeah, what do you consider a Certic audit an audit or a code review, right?
No,
No.
it's not a marketing tool. And every now and then when people come to my Discord to say, have you been audited? Sometimes I say, yes, I have been audited, and you are asking the wrong question. If you're going to look at the audit and think that I cannot drag you, you are wrong, because I can drag you after the audit. That doesn't protect you. The audit is not a marketing tool, doesn't actually tell you that the code is safe and that you're not going to get dragged. No, the audit is not that. It's not a code review for the protocol either, because that's a complete waste of money. If you are going to be waiting 6 months for Trail of Bits to go through your code and you get a code review, Jesus, what a waste of time and money. And not only that, but well, then you actually have your time to market is going to be awful because then you actually haven't been audited yet because you have just got a code review. It's not a code review. It's very different. And it's definitely not a guarantee of safety. Not only because I can have a clean audit and then do a governance hack myself and run away with the money. Not because of that. It's because auditors miss things always. I have right now about 7 bugs in Yield v2 that was audited twice. We are working around that. Your money is safe, we think.
Yeah, we've got 2 as well, right? It just happens. Yeah. If they're minor, it's okay, right? Like, or if there's a parameter, you can reduce the impact, right? But yeah.
You live with it, you change the front end so that people don't go there, you do things. But yeah, it's not a guarantee of safety, neither 2 nor 3. The only thing that is a guarantee of safety is time on mainnet. I know that the Ether wrapper is safe for 2 reasons. It's simple and it's been there for ages. Fine. Anything else? I cannot say. My code, the code that has been there for months, I think it's safe by now, but we'll see when it holds $1 billion and it's a nicer honeypot. Not any of those things. What it is? An audit is just getting a very skilled professional to find bugs that are too difficult for you to find. There is some stuff to unpack in there, because when I say too difficult for you to find, means that there are lots of bugs that you must find before you get the professional. Okay, you don't want to get the professional to get bogged down on all those bugs that you could have found, but at the same time, you need to recognize your limitations and say, okay, I cannot find everything. That's why I get an auditor that will find these specific bugs. Which ones? We'll see. And just to be clear, everything has bugs all the time. Okay, have a plan B and a plan C. Okay, maybe 2 audits. I code lots of bugs, by the way. When I went to Code Arena for the first time with code that hadn't been code reviewed, I got a critical bug for each 2,000 lines of code. So I had 2 critical bugs, and that's pretty good performance. Everyone has bugs.
Do you guys have a circuit breaker in Yield v2? Something to pause the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We call it the emergency break, and it works by removing the orchestration between the contracts. So we just plug permissions from contracts so that they cannot communicate with each other.
Sure.
And yes, we also do game days where suddenly the day for the work has stopped and we are going to role play a hack. Those are always fun. Okay, so you need to learn to love your auditor. I've screamed at some of them, but I actually also love them. And they get bored if your bugs are silly. Okay, you can go to Code Arena, and from Code Arena, you are going to get 1 million audit reports, and you go through them, and you will recognize the patterns. I really recognize them because I have to judge the same bugs once and again and again. Go through the Code Arena reports, and anything that you can find in a Code Arena report, fix it. Okay. Don't get your auditor bored with the again this bug, again this bug. No, make it challenging. It's like make it like a good challenge. Auditors come very close to be the kind of white hacker profile. They like something that is tight and nice, and that they have to find their way in.
We
a lot
know
more
that
rewarding.
Code Arena participants are hackers, right? We've like the index hacker was one of the Code Arena participants, right?
Yeah, so I judged that one.
Did you? Interesting. I think we had a hacker apply to us like 2 or 3 months later. I think it might have been him actually specifically that tried to apply for a developer job.
Yeah, tensors. That was
Yeah,
tensors.
yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, if you can make your code be this kind of tight puzzle that the auditor has to make his way in to find the one critical bug, that's the goal. Okay, don't throw some shitty code that to say, no, I could go this way, I could go this way, I could go this way, I could go this way. It's not fun. Make it difficult for them. And also to be nice to your auditor. Auditors are people, and reading NetSpec is boring, to be honest. I found that it's a lot better if you write good documentation where you tell the story, okay? Tell the story of how you wrote the code. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Which difficulties you found here? Which difficulties you found there? A little bit like a diary. Dear diary, today I coded a bug, okay? That's a lot more interesting because the auditors will read the documentation, but they're human. If you make engaging documentation, they will read it a lot better. So you have to work in general to make sure that the auditor is engaged and is challenged and likes auditing your code, because you want to get top performance from this top professional. The net spec that you're going to write is dry, okay, but it's necessary. That's what
for people unfamiliar with NetSpec, right? If you're commenting your code, especially in Solidity now, right, you can comment in some pretty standardized ways to ensure that, I mean, you can generate automated documentation if you want with it, and more so, it's just standardized, right? So yeah, just for everyone not familiar with that.
Yeah, should I show an example?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me see. Stop share. This something is getting in the way.
I don't know if you knew, but Etherscan, as of I think last week, also started showing NetSpec comments in their interfaces.
Yeah, and that's great. I love that one.
It's interesting. Mudit commented when I kind of announced that, or said I noticed it, that this is a great opportunity for vulnerabilities, right?
Are you guys seeing GitHub, or are you seeing the slides still?
GitHub, we got it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, for example, come on. Okay. So when you go through my code, this is not spec. It says this function does this function does that, this function does this, and so on. And this is actually not even great because I'm not putting the parameters. Okay, if someone comes to this function, that will help them a little bit understand what that function does. But that's a very, very insular, very fragmented view of the whole problem. You go to the README, and you get a bit more information. Let's see if I wrote a README here. Okay, this is a talk about what I want to do, not
and
what I've done.
What about the ASCII art too? That's really what I'm. Oh, no ASCII art, man.
Sorry. So here I'm telling a little bit more of a story, but this is still awful. You should tell more things. I'm going to find you one better. A better one. Finding. Let's see if I can still find it. Code arena.
If you can't find it, it's no problem.
Okay, I will find it later. I have a README for the last audit.
For yield V1 or yield G2?
For yield V2 for the convex join. Just give me a second. I will actually find it because it's easier if I just go here. And it's a good it's a better example of what you need to do. So,
and this is a good opportunity for people not familiar with Code Arena, right? Code Arena is spectacular. Yeah. This is where Alberto was saying he judges. Honestly, the results that we got ourselves out of Code Arena were spectacular, at least compared to a regular audit. And really, at the end of the day, we had, I think, 11 judges what do you call them? What do you call the auditors? There's like a wardens participate in our competition, competing for about $80,000, right? And the result was just hands down better than a traditional audit, at least I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a better example of documentation. It's still not perfect, but is better. Okay. So this is what the whole platform is. This is what we are trying to do. This is a similar thing that you can use. These are the contracts and so on. And now these are little stories that are more interesting about how does this thing work? Okay, so how you're supposed to use these contracts. You are going to do batch. In our case, you are going to do a batch, and you are going to put these things together, and you are going to do this and that. Other the same choices. Why did I do this? Why did I segregate these two contracts? Because I don't want to touch their code. Am I worried about a governance attack? No, because we are testing in blockchain forks and doing several layers of verification. Am I worried about my users losing money because they interact with my smart contracts in a silly way? Nah, I'm fine with that. Let them off. And all the ones like were like,
did they still
dude.
submit those bugs? Is my yeah.
And I was appropriately snarky. Yeah, and I've had plenty of fun with this README. I've sent it everywhere. Things that we deviate from best practices, we do it because this way, because we want it. We are going to keep doing this kind of READMEs a lot more in the future, and also starting from the beginning. Why are we starting this piece of code? How are we going to use this piece of code? Why did we choose this architecture? That kind of stuff is really a little bit like a diary. And then when you get to some complicated part of the code, like, okay, so this needs to work in this way, same. Adds another entry to the diary. Dear diary, today I decided to remove permissions from this contract because otherwise this can happen. That's a lot more readable than just NetSpec. There are other things that we have that we also use, like the cookbook. I love
Here's the
ASCII.
ASCII art. Yeah.
Of course. This is what you can do with the contracts, which are all very complicated batches. And then in some places, we are starting to put these kind of diagrams as well. So this is how you post collateral. Pop, 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 pop. Then there are more, or is that the only one? Maybe the only one.
Well,
But yeah,
I'm more than willing to talk shit about Notional because they don't do any of this. All right. And this is why we've chosen to try to coordinate with you guys as far as our maturities and everything. Right. It's like there's a big difference for everybody between at the end of the day, a protocol that's willing to do this for everybody else, and that's not. Right. Notional is going to get shit results out of their auditors. They're just not going to be able to understand the complexity, and they're not going to get great results.
Yeah, Notional is complex. I had to go through their code very recently to add them as collateral to yield. And some parts are genuinely brilliant, but yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have some slides somewhere else about what to put in the, I think it's right here. Others said it better. It's right here. There are others that have made this list of what you should add in the documentation a lot better than myself. Okay, Corey Petty gave a talk in Gitcoin kernel a while back. He's very good. Tincho made a really good list of how to prepare for an audit, and I follow Joran. He's a top class auditor. He audited Yield V2 from Trail of Bits, and he really knows his stuff. You can find this documentation and find what to include in it. The point I wanted to make is that you need the NatSpec, which is the what, and then you need to bring the auditor with you in the journey. Okay, it's not only about the raw amount of documentation, about the size of the paper stack, but about how engaging it is and how it tells the story of why did you do things, and in a certain way how to use the code. Okay. Others said better what to include in documentation. That's something that you can go out and research. Okay, so now you know that you want an auditor that is enjoying his job. He's found the documentation, he's read it with cover to back. He finds it more interesting than The Godfather. You now want your code to be clean for them. You want your auditors to be able to focus and to find that tight puzzle that your code is and that has one single way in, and you want them to be challenged to find it. Okay, instead of having some messy piece of code that gets them distracted. Testing is the best way to find bugs. Seems logical, but hey, here am I to say it. You need to test. What you find is different with each stage of testing. When you are unit testing, you find whether your code works, basically, whether it just works. You need to unit test 100% coverage. That means that the test, all the code works. Does that find all the bugs? No. Why? There are some things that you're not going to be able to test. Fuzzing is something that will tell you if your mathematical formulas, that you're likely to have a couple, not many, but probably a couple, whether they do what they do for all possible values. When I was coding fixidity, that fixed point math library, I did it all with unit tests. So for each arithmetic formula, I would test it for 1, for 0, for 2, for n plus 1, okay, to use the iterative. And if it was negative, to the other end. That was such a lot of testing, awful. Fuzzing is a lot better than that. And now with Foundry, it comes out of the box. You just click the button and it will test with 10,000 or 100,000 values chosen as well to say, hold on, have you noticed that for the max integer value, this thing doesn't do what it is supposed to do? I have found things through fuzzing. I used it for Yield v1. And that's how we found that we were losing precision in calculating exponents to save gas. And that would make the price formula a little bit wobbly in the last few decimals, which would make sometimes the users get more money than they should. And that was screwing the invariance of the AMM, of the automated market maker. Something I would have
What was the solution? Err on the side of giving them less money than they should? Yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, we took 1 billion way out of each trade as a fee because we knew through fuzzing that the error was always smaller than 1 billion way, which comes to be like 0.00001 dollars. So yeah, we just did that. And then there is the third layer of testing, which is quite similar to fuzzing, but from a user point of view, which is the front-end developers. I like to release my front-end developers in the smart contracts before I call the auditors, because they do find lots of bugs, much better than the auditor. Not only because of pressing buttons and sending the wrong data into the contracts that they also do, but also because they actually find whether you actually coded the right thing. It's like, okay, my unit tests are right, it works. Okay, the formulas are all good, but I just didn't code the right thing I was supposed to code. And that's what the front-end developer tells you. If you call the auditor before, he will say, no, your contracts are perfect. It's only a shame that you didn't code the right thing and you have to start again. So yeah, front-end testing always before the audits. I've made that mistake before, by the way.
Especially, yeah, I mean, in context for us, it's been the way our contracts are organized and what's available in each, right? And if we're loading in a struct on one contract that already has some piece of data we need, why would we need some redundant call for that? And those calls add up, actually, right? Sorry, I don't want to get into too much in front end detail, but like they do. Our contract or our front end is now slower because we have a ton of reads, right?
Yeah, no, and they also think basic things that I wouldn't have thought before. So for example, in Yield, we have a feature where you have a loan that matures in March and you want to roll it. You want to make it mature in June as a user and you just look at different interest rate and so on. So I coded that, unit tested that, fuzzing, perfect. And then the front-end developer comes and says, you know, when I roll back, it crashes. We want to roll back as well. That makes sense. Okay, back to coding.
I mean, why does he want to roll back? That's how I feel.
I don't know.
So yeah, I don't know. All right, sorry. I'll let you go.
I don't know. Alan didn't tell me. Alan told me to add the feature, so I just added the feature. I basically hadn't thought about it. All those layers plus your clean code will make, well, all those layers will find all those bugs from the auditor. You go through the audit reports from Code Arena, you remove all that. You do full unit testing, you do fuzzing, you release the front-end developers. Now you have clean code. Now is the time to get an audit. It's difficult with traditional audits because they have a 6-month lead time. So you are kind of playing with all the features so that everything is ready for the auditor to start. It's very difficult to nail it. It's a little bit easier with Code Arena because there's only a month lead time. But anyway, that's the ideal scenario. And that's what I aim. And now you have the auditor, okay? You have engaging documentation, beautiful. You have such a clean code base, perfect. And you have nailed the timing so that now you have the auditor. I've been known in the past for taking quite a combative stance with the auditors. They are going to criticize my code. They have no idea how this thing works. I have no shame to say that I was a horrible person, and I'm trying to be better. Okay, during the audit, you need to swap to the other side. You need to forget about defending your code, and you need to work with the auditor. When they find a bug or when they have a hunch, have you thought about reentrancy? Instead of saying, nah, it's fine, I always do this and I always do that. I'm fine with reentrancy. No, go the other way around. It's like, if it's true that you hadn't thought about reentrancy, I had no idea about reentrancy. I'm going to go deep into reentrancy now. Where should I start looking? Okay. So instead of telling them, trying to prove them wrong and saying that your contract doesn't have bugs, it's the other way around. Use those hunches that they have and try to prove them right. It's like, that's a great lead. Let's see if we can crack it that way. Swap sides, become an auditor, my friend.
I feel like you're calling me out like personally when you're talking about like the reentrancy concerns. We had a few question marks about that, and I said, don't worry. You know, I thought about it already. We don't have reentrancy, which yeah, it's probably not the right answer, right? Yeah.
I did the same a week ago with the auditor saying me, have you thought about reentrancy? And I said, I'm fine. And then I said, actually, no. Let me look at this. Let me see how can I crack this with reentrancy. And I went deep.
Did you find anywhere?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So okay, that's a good way to put it, though. So yeah, you're rightfully confident, maybe.
I don't think so, but I was rattled because I honestly I hadn't thought about reentrancy at all.
Yeah.
And I didn't have reentrancy bugs. Maybe because of good coding practices, or maybe because of luck. But interestingly, that's exactly what I was paying the auditor for, to tell me about those things that I had missed. The auditor didn't tell me, your pragma is not locked, or you can save some gas in here. He said, have you actually thought about reentrancy? Okay, and like that, I've got a few pointed questions. Yeah, that's the audit that you're looking for, right? The audit that you are looking for is not a long audit with 500 bugs. It's not even a short audit with 20 bugs. It's not an audit with no bugs, especially not that one. It's an audit with 1, 2, or 3 bugs, all of them critical, and all of them obscure. That's the one that you're looking for. Yeah, so work with the auditor and have fun trying to crack the code. Not the time for questions. What about questions? When the auditor asks you a question? You want them to ask, as I just said, you want them to ask the questions about things that you really didn't think about this attack vector. Have you thought what happens if the Uniswap pool gets manipulated? Have you thought about reentrancy? Have you thought about, I don't know, What if they
Self-transfers is actually a common one that we missed, right? If you have a unique token and you can transfer it to yourself, does that mean you can infinitely mint yourself tokens? Right?
Yes, I had a critical bug like that in Vito.
We did as well. That was like, it was the one that Code Arena caught that other people had missed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is the interesting concept that when an auditor asks you how something works, that's a documentation bug. That's something you need to fix. When an auditor asks you, how do your liquidations actually work? Okay, that's a bug. Okay, I need to fix that. Is again, is not what you want. It's not what you want in your audit, to get lots of those questions of how something works. So that's something that you need to fix, because you will have more audits about this one. And now that you are getting the questions, is the time to write down all the questions from the auditor and fix that in the documentation. So
I'll be very critical of documentation. We're working on something where I've had to look at all of the fixed rate projects documentation, and the majority are either inaccessible or completely like just not complete. Notional, still, I don't think if you go to their website, they have no way to access their V2 docs unless you specifically know the address ahead of time. And if you do get to there, they are incomplete. We had multiple websites that, like, again, like they're just essentially nothing works. And that's mind-blowing, right? How could you go into an audit and expect your auditor to be able to work with you if you don't provide them with those resources, right?
yeah, well, our documentation is not perfect. It's a work in progress. At least I recognize our faults, and I want to be better.
Well,
But
yeah, I
same,
told them that the link is hyperlinking the wrong place, and I still don't think they fixed it. So
I also told them.
really, that's yeah, awesome.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, take those questions from the auditor, which are the bugs on your documentation, and fix them. So what's a perfect audit? And I have to say, coding is fun, and audits are actually fun. I actually love getting audits, because when I like to talk about code, I like to talk about my code. I like to talk about code with people that are smarter than I am, and an audit is a rare occasion for that. So the times that I've got to talk with an auditor deeply about the contracts have been great times. With when was it? With Yield V2, the first audit, I did it in Code Arena, and the best warden was Rajiv, 0x Rajiv, which now leads Securium. And he was really good. He was asking lots of questions, getting really deep into the contracts, and I was loving that conversation. I was like every day, like, Rajiv, what have you been looking for?
I believe Rajiv is a mentor for kernel guys. So if you're looking for a resource or questions, he's probably the guy to reach out to. Yeah.
Yeah. He's great, and I loved having those conversations. And now in the last audit for GLV2 for the convex integration with Liam 0x Listwood, the same. Is those auditors? This is very specific for Code Arena, but in Code Arena, not all auditors will interact the same with you. Some of them will submit the reports and disappear, and a very few of them will actually come to you with questions. Okay, those auditors are to be treasured and nurtured. Okay, because those are the guys that are really interested, and those are the guys that you have to ease them into the code. You have to help them, and those are the ones that invariably find the bugs. So those are the best ones. Anyway, so audits are fun. I love audits. I love getting audited. What a weird guy. And how to have a fun audit. Complete documentation. The nuts, back and the why. Engaging. Make it nice to read. Okay. Not everyone can write articles, but try. Audit at the right time. Make sure that you clean your code through reading reports and through testing. And at least is first testing, then what has been fixed elsewhere, which might be a good idea. Working with an auditor is fun, and you want those pointed questions about attack vectors that you had missed. You don't want questions about how this works. You want questions about, have you thought about this? Of course I haven't. And an audit is not the end state. You will have more audits after that one, and you will do better. Okay. My first audit, I fought the auditors. They asked lots of questions. They found bugs. They corrected me in lots of silly things. I'm getting better. We all get better. Yes, that's the time for questions. Questions, please.
So we've only had a few from the crowd, but David asked, I mean, just pretty simply, and this is probably before you guys had really gotten funding. So I guess Alan was already with Paradigm, so I don't really know. But who was really doing the code reviews early on, when it was more of a proof of concept?
So at first it was Alan and I, and Alan was reviewing my code. And he's actually not bad at reviewing code. I got Georgios Konstantopoulos when he was hired by Paradigm to review my code.
So you were lucky, essentially. Yeah.
To a point, because at some point Georgios got too busy to actually review each PR, and at some point I got too good for Alan, and he couldn't really review my code anymore. So I went to both audits with unreviewed code. Basically, I did it on myself. I just made sure that my code was squeaky clean, coding it in very simple ways, running away from all complicated techniques and everything, so that it would be clear to understand. And that's it.
So this
Not
is a
everyone can do this,
question.
but I did.
I've got a couple kind of semi-related ones, but this is about test suites, right? And in general, I mean, there's a lot of variety. At Swivel, we actually use one that's kind of similar to DApp tools, but was custom before that came out even. And in general, yeah, I guess so. Question kind of is, what test suite are you guys using? And are you guys, on my end, the question is, are you guys rapidly changing anytime something new comes out? Or, how exactly do you guys go about operationalizing things on that end?
It's actually quite hard to change the suites
Yeah.
once you have started. I started with Truffle V1. I had to I changed to Hard Hat for V2. And when when I got trainees in Ethernet DAO, and now I have developers to review my code, and one of the developers got the task of doing a major rewrite of our automated market maker. He asked if he could do it in Foundry, and I said, yes, let's do it in Foundry.
Yeah.
So we have part of our code in Foundry, part in Hard Hat. And
how do you feel about that? Yeah.
I think that Foundry is a lot better. It's a lot faster. It's a lot more productive. So I'm actually paying another trainee. I have more developers that I know what to do with. So I'm getting one of them to rewrite all the tests in Foundry now.
Nice. Well, yeah, that saves you a lot of effort for sure.
It's nice to have all the developers that you can use and more.
Yeah, we're onboarding. We're on it. I need to get that other talk, I suppose. Yeah, so next one. I mean, Connor, do you want to just hop on and unmute and you can ask it? Or, I mean, I can go ahead and do it myself.
Yeah, for sure. I have a few, so take your pick. But I guess the first one I'd ask is, yeah, I guess so. Are there clean code concepts, right? You talked about writing clean Solidity code, smart contract code. Are there concepts there that are maybe like counterintuitive to programmers who are coming in from another domain or just learning smart contract programming? Or do you think the principles for writing clean smart contract code are basically the same as writing other types of code?
Well, it depends. I probably had an advantage when I came to smart contract development in that I was not really a developer. I was not a professional developer, so I came kind of as a clean slate. But developing smart contracts is different from regular coding in that they are very small pieces of code with a language that is still quite simple. And at the same time, the mutability and money involved make them have different requirements in terms of safety. So some people say that is more similar to coding embedded circuits than to do general programming, and I think that's true. So in coding smart contracts, you need to go one step beyond the clean coding techniques that you would use in normal software development, and really go extreme on that in like so when I started mentoring people, I used to tell them, look, it's cool that your code is correct, but that's not enough. I want your code to be beautiful. Okay, I want it to be pretty. I want it to be readable. I want to enjoy reading your code. Just that it works, yeah, it's a good first step, but that's really, really not enough, because you don't want the bugs to hide in there. That's a bit of a throwback to when I didn't have anyone to review my code. So I was a little bit paranoid about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the comment of clean code, I think, is a little bit different even or like the word clean is referring to a slightly different thing in Solidity than in regular languages, because clean, kind of like Alberto was saying, means it works and you're following the development standards in regular contexts. Whereas in Solidity, you need to do that. Plus, you need to like use variable names that are relevant and don't confuse anyone, right? Whether that is, Alberto goes in a completely different direction with this.
Or the opposite.
Well, like, yeah, well, but it's completing a language, right? If you already have your language, it's maintaining that language, making sure that it is clear, right? Making sure that it's ubiquitous. This is a big concept that our lead dev loves talking about is making sure your language is ubiquitous, right? It helps a lot, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's even stuff like, it might be my instinct in non-smart contract programming to make things as small as possible, right? We'll have 100 different tiny objects that each do one thing well, but I think there's like less of that, right? That's less of a principle in smart contract programming, right? Where we're not going to deploy 100 different contracts to do these kind of things, right? Or there are different trade-offs, right, in this kind of environment. Similar with like inheritance, right? I might create a lot of inheritance hierarchy for some, some complex structure, but I think that's less useful sometimes in writing smart contracts.
Yeah, in smart contracts programming, also you have the thing of gas, which is not something that you have in other software development languages. So at some point you have to develop some kind of intuition of which things might be too costly on the long term and which things are okay. Trying not to read or write to memory too much or to storage. When to pack variables so that you can save some gas without hurting readability. Those things, when it's worth it to optimize, when it's not worth it, because you can save some gas here, but makes the code not beautiful, maybe not. So it has its own philosophy. Really.
And I'd also mention up until last week, there was a limit to how many variables you can have in a method, right? You can only have 16 variables. So at that point, you're literally forced to make modular code. So
right.
Yeah, that's been lifted with the latest version, I hear. It's the end of an era.
I test all my code in Remix, so I don't get it yet. Like that's where I do all my messing around, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I haven't been able to enjoy the joys yet.
You kids have it too easy.
Yeah, Connor, you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I have a few. Why don't we go to Joe? If we can come back if there's more time.
Sure. Yeah, Joe, go for it.
Did you say me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, do the auditors usually have a test suite, almost like a Metasploit library of their own or something like that? I know Metasploit's not relevant to this, but how are the auditors, or are they usually just looking for patterns that they've always seen in all the different things, and so they're talking with you and they're looking at the code and suggesting things, and then that's how they're finding things?
You should talk with Rajiv, since he's in the talks, and he will give you a better talk or all the material that he's written. The Joran also is very good at that. In short, there are many ways in which they attack a problem. Some of them is just manual review of going through the code and seeing things that are suspicious. Modit Gupta, for example, just goes through the code, putting little notes in the lines that are suspicious, goes through all the code, and then goes through each one of those lines that he marks marked as suspicious and seeing if he can hack the contract that way. Joran mentioned that one technique that he uses is working from the back. Like, instead of assuming that everything goes well, let's assume that someone actually is stealing money from this contract. How are they doing it? And trying to work backwards. There is also kind of a procedural review of like, okay, let's check all the access control. Is the access control okay? Okay, let's move to the next thing. Let's check the math. Is all the rounding going in the right direction? Okay, let's check next thing. And kind of breaking down the code into different different types of errors and looking for that error through all the code is easier to focus that well. Also, other things that wardens at Code Arena use a lot because they are looking for the criticals first. It's like, okay, which ones are the contracts that if they fail will do the most damage? Okay, so let's try to crack this one contract because this is the one holding the money. Yeah, and if they cannot crack that one, okay, let's crack this one other contract, which is the one that moves the money. And that way, kind of working outwards. They have many techniques like that. I am not an auditor, so maybe that's why I'm surprised when they come and they ask me about reentrancy. How did you think about that? But yeah, there is a pretty good list, the Sol Curity list from Transmissions 11. That is a list of things that you should check in each contract. But from experience, I know that no developer actually goes to the extent of checking each one of those 100 points on each PR, because we are not like that.
I swear,
So, yeah.
as well, some Code Arena guys just run like, do you have reentrancy protection? Right? And do you like, and if no, we are going to report that. Right? I swear to God, some people do on a simple level do that sort of stuff too.
So some people do that. Some people, Trail of Bits, for example, they code your mathematical functions into a fuzzer if you haven't done it to find how to break them. There, that's an easy one. You can use things like a Slither and Manticore and other static tools. There's is what I was saying in the talk. An auditor is a very skilled role. If you are going to be a CEO, you are not going to be an auditor. You are not going to have the time to learn all that stuff. Your role is more to clean your code enough so that they can get those bugs that they have trained so hard to know how to find and that you are paying so expensively for.
So I've got a question for you, which is, generally speaking, right, you go through an audit. Like you said, it is good if you find 1 or 2 or 3 critical vulnerabilities. But in the example of the sushi swap or the Trident competitions you hosted, I believe there was like 16 and 17 high risk bugs on each, right? If that is the case, how do you as a developer feel, right, when you get that back? And 2, then how do you as a user, right? Let's say sushi, the Trident's launching upcoming, right?
Okay.
How should people look at stuff like that? Yeah.
How do I feel as a developer? I would feel that someone has failed me as a developer. No, I have to be honest. Look, this is not. This shouldn't be some kind of solitary pursuit. It's not like I get my laptop, I get into the cave, I code the whole thing, I come out. No, it's a team. It's teamwork. You were asking me who was reviewing my code. If I go to the audit with 16 high risk things, I go to the people that review my code, and it's like, how could you do this to me? How could you miss 16 high risk? How?
And then it happened on the next one, and it was 17.
Yeah, and then I would go and say, okay, this audit is a complete disaster. How are we going to do it for the next audit? Okay, because if you get 16 high risk findings in an audit, in fixing all those 16, you are going to change the code base so much that you're going to introduce at least one. So you need to have another audit. So.
Well, then how do you, all right, what do you feel about Trident now? right? So they've gone through 2, they went through 1 and there were 16, and then they went through another and there were 17.
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't know.
right. It's going live soon, I think. And I don't know. I actually, as a user, I think it's a way better product than Uniswap if it's safe, right? But
I don't know. Maybe they should. Well, they should look quite deeply at their software development techniques. How do you miss so many? Do you have code reviews? What kind of code reviews do you have? Seriously, that's difficult to get. What kind of architecture are you planning? How are you approaching this whole thing? Seriously. So an audit.
I have no idea what's going on in their organization, but yeah. I don't know. I'm not trying to FUD anyone. Let me make this clear.
No.
I actually really like the product, blah, blah, blah. So
No, but I from my own experience, when we went to Code Arena to get an audit for the convex integration, and we came out with several high risk ones and a bunch of low risk ones. It was like, okay, we have failed this audit.
yeah.
We are going to basically scrap this code. We scrapped most of it. We coded it again, okay, with a different approach that is safer. We had the problem that we were trusting the abracadabra guys to have coded a good contract, and it was full of crap, literally. So it's like, okay, we are going to stop trusting abracadabra. We have now proof that their code is crap. So let's recode their stuff and our stuff in a safer way. And basically we have recoded the whole thing, and we are going through an audit for the second version again, which now is clean.
Have you guys
Kind
had issues with classification of errors, right? Have you had anything you felt like was misclassified as like high risk or low risk, medium, etc.?
Does it matter?
That's my question. That was actually part of the next question, which is
It doesn't
like,
matter. No, that
Yeah,
doesn't
there you
matter
go.
at all. It's not an audit. Is not a marketing tool.
Yeah, yep. I mean, but
Okay.
other people will perceive it as one, but for you, you shouldn't ever feel like that, right? That's the differentiator I had in my questions. Yeah. All right, Joe, if you want to ask
Well,
any more of your side, you can go for it too.
Yes, and that they are going to
We're
get
lagging a little
pulled.
bit, maybe. Am I lagging?
It really doesn't matter. The classification just matters to how much money does each warden get. When you go to the audit, you want to find the bugs. Okay, the bug is the bug. Whether it's high risk or it's low risk, the bug is the same. You have to fix it or acknowledge it or whatever. I try very hard to really not care about that because I don't want to fall into the trap of using it as a marketing tool. It doesn't matter.
Do you find that as a judge, other people do care?
Oh, everyone cares. Of course, everyone cares, and
Sure.
and I mean, if I get one that is misclassified, I will say, okay, this is misclassified. I think it's medium, not high. But when the judge comes and say, I think it's high, I'm not going to argue. Okay, it's high, good. I made my case. You did your judging. That's fine.
So, do you think actually there's a couple of big questions. One is how do you feel about upgradable contracts and how often should they be audited? I think that is actually a really big one. And then another one from, I'll just let you answer that first, rather. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So it took me a very long time to understand upgradable contracts, and I haven't had much experience with them. So in general, I used to dislike them, and everything that I've coded is not upgradable. GIL v2 is upgradable in the sense that it's modular. Okay, so it's like MakerDAO that you can pull one piece off and put one piece in, except the same as in MakerDAO, except for the accounting contract, the cauldron, that has at least one very annoying bug that I hate, maybe two that I hate, and I cannot change that one. And precisely today I was thinking, actually, I used to push for that Uniswap architecture where you have the very simple immutable core and the modular proxies that go into it that you can change. And you just need to make sure that the modular core is perfect. and you can make all the errors outside. And as an idealistic person, I thought that was possible. And then I coded GLV2, and the cauldron has 2 annoying bugs. And then I thought, hold on, maybe you can use that modular approach, but that immutable core is what you do, what you make upgradable. And you only upgrade it, you put yourself some kind of limit. I won't upgrade this more than once every 6 months or something like that. So that is pretty well tested. Okay, it's not something that you should use lightly because it's dangerous, but it's something that is very useful on occasion. So that's where I'm leaning now.
Yeah, my only question as a user is whether I can trust the people that are upgrading it to get proper audits when it's actually necessary, right? Like if it's necessary, we have to trust them to control that, which is its own thing. I want to, I'll move on to the next question. Oh, sorry. That's a big rabbit hole. Yeah, sorry.
In a way, there are many features that can basically destroy the protocol. Not only an upgrade could be catastrophically bad, but you can make many other things in seemingly innocent upgrades that will break you the same. So I don't think that upgradable contracts are a factor there. I think that proper software development techniques, that's what the users should be asking for. They shouldn't be asking, where's your audit? No, they should be asking, hold on, let me see your governance process, how you test things before they get deployed. Now, let me see what's your software development process. Who does code reviews? How do you test? Not the audit. All the rest is more telling.
My last question, and I'll let Joe wrap us up, is, there are alternatives to regular audits like Certora, right? It's really formal verification. It's kind of like fuzzing effectively, right? For the contract in general. Just how do you feel these compare / do they actually replace, let's say you're planning to get 2 audits. Does a Certora audit really replace that as one of them, or
No, they're complementary. There's like a unit testing and fuzzing and front-end testing. And test on symbolic execution. They all find kind of different things. Symbolic execution will work for problems of a certain complexity, but I doubt that it can find everything. I haven't gone through many. I'm not an expert. I'm talking a little bit of my hat, but I use a policy of all of the above. Everything that can be done that is different. Yeah, let's throw everything.
I mean, the next compound question was, is it largely a crutch for bad testing? And I think the answer was partially yes, right? Like you want to be doing all these things, but largely like you should be doing that anyway in your own testing. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, Joe, you had like 1 or 2 more, and if there's anything else from the crowd, other than that, we'll wrap it up and then do little breakouts.
I had 1 more. So
sorry,
I'm curious
Connor.
to go around. All good. Yeah, you mentioned unit tests and fuzz tests, right? As like 2 types of tests, but we also have this concept of like fork testing, right? Where you fork off mainnet state and kind of simulate something based on the state of the real world. And like, especially in DeFi, right? We've seen a lot of smart contract bugs move from like, reentrancy, overflow, like stuff that's with a single specific contract to like complex integrations with other protocols or interactions between contracts. So like, how do you think about testing that stuff, and like, where would you put that in your testing pyramid?
That's actually in my book is part of unit testing, because when you are testing these complex integrations, the mocks only take you that far. Okay, so we do test lots of stuff on mainnet forks because it's the only way to actually do it. But at the same time, when you do that kind of test on a mainnet fork, you're still only testing one scenario. Okay, so for example, we use that for liquidations. We have our own liquidations bot, because when a vault needs to be liquidated, and we cannot really depend on liquidators to appear. Sometimes they will fail to appear and we have to liquidate ourselves. So each time that we release a new collateral or new probable asset, we have to upgrade the liquidation spot and see that it will be able to liquidate that collateral, and you can only do that on a fork, because basically you have to interact with Uniswap and you have to interact with a number of protocols, and you cannot mock them. But that test still will test only in one particular block, one particular scenario. It won't be like fuzzing where you can test lots of different things. So it's part of unit testing, fork testing. And we also fork test every single governance proposal. So every time.
Awesome. Anything else from your end, Connor? All right. Well, just genuinely, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for staying up a little late. Right. I don't know. It's not that bad, but yeah. Thanks in general for coming on. From here, everyone will be heading to the Gather Town gathers. Do we have anyone to post the links in chat? If not, I'll try to find it really quickly.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Then I will be logging off and going to bed. Bye-bye.
Thanks again, man.
Take care.
See ya.